checking, everybody. Welcome to an Overreaction Monday show on Orange Bloods Live. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That is Anwar Richardson. Glad to be with you as the Longhorns sit 12 days away from the season opener against Colorado State. We'll be breaking down everything from the scrimmage that was, including things that did and didn't happen. And should you be freaking out at all that the offense isn't a high wire act so close to the start of the season? We'll get into all those things. Want to give a shout out to our guys over at rogueshop.com. Use that promo code OrangeBloods. Get yourself a discount. And the bottom line is, if you want to make yourself and your day just a little bit better, check out the gummies, the cartridges, the salve, all the pet products. Just go to the website, check it out, do a little bit of shopping. I think I'm actually going to do that today. Onward, I was thinking I'm going to place my order today.
Okay.
It'll arrive before the end of the week. And I might even open the package and show everybody just kind of the whole experience so that we can do it together. Stay tuned. Over the course of the week, at some point, I got to believe my package will arrive, and I'll share all of the goodies with the rest of the audience. Speaking of the audience, guys, jump into the Specs chat. Super chat us up, comment away, like, comment, subscribe. We appreciate all that. We passed 20,000 subscribers over the weekend, on our way to 2 billion. We appreciate everybody who's been along with us for the last few years, going into the future. Onward. Any hot takes coming out of the weekend? It was a bit of a subdued scrimmage, right? They didn't tackle. Most of the running backs had "Don't Hit Me" jerseys on.
Yeah.
So it was hard to, I think, take too much out of a proceeding that Sark seemed to indicate, you know what, we need this less than we need to stay healthy. So I don't know that there were a lot of major headlines coming out of the scrimmage on Saturday, but I think the depth chart is on its way to being made. And I'm just curious, what did you wake up today thinking about from the weekend?
Well, a couple of things, Catch. I think the first thing, as relates to the weekend, is concerned. My only takeaway was they pretty much they knew and know who their two deep is and where everybody else is, because he didn't feel the need, Catch, to force a contact practice to try to figure out, okay, who's going to be that third guy, fourth guy, like all that kind of stuff. Like I feel like the overwhelming message was we already know this team. Like, we're good. Nothing else to gather. Like, there's literally nothing else to gather here. Anybody who was on the team who might have been tinkering on the border, if you thought Saturday was going to be the thing that tipped the scales on your favor, that wasn't it. So go ahead, Catch. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if you're on the roster and you needed Saturday, then probably what you needed was to do something before Saturday.
Yeah, you totally needed to do something on a bunch of Saturdays and a bunch of days in July and August to kind of solidify that. So I don't know, Catch. The biggest thing for me is, as you said, 12 days away. The only thing I'm right now, Catch, is I'm looking for blind spots for myself. Like, is there anything of this team? Because you and I are going to make our predictions this upcoming weekend. Like, everyone has come out with their season predictions, but you and I typically wait until the weekend before. We want to make sure there's no injuries, all the ducks, everything, all the horses in the barn. I'm just all about blind spots, Catch. Am I missing something? Is there anything I'm overlooking? Are there things that I am taking for granted? Am I supposed to look at this team and think this is the finished product? Like, this is the team that's going to compete for an SEC championship. Where's my confidence as relates to this defensive line? Am I 100% sold on everybody? Am I 100% sold on the running backs and go, from start to finish? Like, that's where I'm at. I'm just looking for blind spots, Catch, and just making sure, am I missing anything?
No, that's fair. And I think that there will be a couple of positions that go into the season that we don't fully know what's under the hood. I mean, defensive tackle, we're just going to learn. We'll learn, and I don't know that we'll learn a whole lot in week one outside of what's the personnel usage look like. I feel like defensive tackle is a little bit like wide receiver. Sark knows he's got a group of guys. He's got 7 guys at defensive tackle that I think they'd be okay putting on the field. Of them truly plus players. That's one of the things we'll be waiting to see. And then at the wide receiver position, who shows early chemistry with Quinn Ewers? Who's the guy that makes the catch on 3rd and 6 to move a new set of downs? Who does Quinn feel like he can rely on? I still don't know that, if the Michigan game weren't the second game of the season, you'd almost look at the first month of September and say, they got plenty of time to work this stuff out. They're going to be fine. They'll win ball games. It's going on the road at Michigan, the defending national champions, in week 2 that puts a certain amount of urgency into got to have these answers right away. But then you start thinking about this is a different season, and you do get a mulligan or two over the course of the season. This team can go 10-2 and make the playoffs. And look, if one of those losses at 10-2 was to Michigan, they'd almost certainly be playing in the SEC championship game with only 1 loss in conference play. It'd be a hell of a tiebreaker, I'm guessing, if at that point they didn't make the championship game. So, it's an interesting way to view this season. We've just never done this before. And I think that one of the things we need to remind everybody, just as college football fans getting ready to start this season, we literally are starting a campaign, new in the SEC, but new in this new 12-team playoff world where maybe you don't have to panic after a loss the first time it occurs. You can kind of pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and go, okay, well, we need to learn from that, and it can't happen again. So I don't know. I'm less stressed about the beginning of this season. I'm real curious to see how it plays out. I'm curious to see what the defensive tackle rotation looks like. I'm curious to see what Anthony Hill looks like. I keep having people tell me that he looks like maybe the best player on the entire team. Well, what does that look like when the games begin and he's playing middle linebacker? And what does the impact of Johnny Nansen bring? I find myself wondering, the offense is an interesting proposition. And this is probably where my biggest hot take is. And Soto, hang tight. We will get you to your first super chat. Matter of fact, let's just knock this out of the way to encourage more super chats. Soto 806 says 2 games this season come down to Burt Auburn. I'm going to say no, Anwar. That's
no.
That seems like a lot.
You did now. Are we talking? Here's the question, Catch. Are we talking not like the last second field goal?
Yeah, that's what he's asking. It comes down to a Burt Auburn kick. Final minute.
What I was going to say, what if he kicks it at like there's a minute 12 left on the clock? Like, or are we saying there's only 1 second left? Or am I just overanalyzing it?
You're overanalyzing it, but I tell you what, I will allow. Does it come down to a Burt Auburn kick in the final 90 seconds of the game? Okay.
Yeah. I'm overanalyzing. He's like, this is way more than I got expected from my super chat. Yeah, I think most games are 1 possession games. Catch, I would say the majority of them come down to, I'd have to go back and look, but most of them are like 7 points or less. They usually come down to that. So yeah, I would say so. I'd put 2 games for sure.
Yeah, but the problem is I'm going to say sell on that, not because it can't happen, but because most of the games actually, I think Texas will be favored to win most of its games this season by double digits. So you can figure there'll be 4 or 5, maybe like 6 close games. But sometimes it comes down to the other team's kicker. Sometimes it comes down to needing a touchdown more than you need a field goal. I'm going to sell. I feel like I said that last year. It's going to come down to a Burt Auburn kick. It didn't a whole lot that I can, really remember. The closest games were decided by things other than Burt Auburn's leg. If it does come down to a Burt Auburn field goal, though, Texas, I think, has got to feel pretty good about its kicking situation more than most.
That's fascinating. We got to come back to that at some point, though, Catch. Because do you think that Texas is going to win hands down most of their games?
What's hands down? I mean, yeah, I'm expecting this team to decisively win the majority of their games. So at least 10 points.
Who are the closest games you see on the season? I'm fascinated by this. You and I have not had this conversation. What are the closest game on the season for you?
Well, I mean, I think the Michigan game is going to be a close game. My thing about Texas is I don't think offensively they're going to come out 50 points a game good. I think that, I think against Michigan week 2, I think they'll struggle to put up a lot of points. I think it'll still be an offense that's finding themselves. I think the Michigan game is going to be close. I think the Georgia game has all of the makings of a last 5 minutes affair. Oklahoma could fall into that. There's a part of me that thinks that Texas deals with Oklahoma decisively, but that game last year is a prime example that sometimes what you think is going to happen and what does happen are two different things. I think the Arkansas game could be a bit of a nail biter. I like the fact that it's early. I think that actually is an advantage for Texas, but I don't have to tell you that Texas going to Arkansas isn't shooting for the layup line, no matter what.
You will never have to. You will never have that argument from me for the rest of eternity. Catch. I don't care if we're 80 years old and a 10-0 team is facing an 0-10 Arkansas team. I'll be like, Catch, I remember back when we had. No, I will never argue that again.
And I think the A&M game is probably going to come. If you ask me to pick a game on the schedule that could come down to a burnt Auburn field goal, I think the A&M game comes to mind. I think that place will be the most electric atmosphere of the entire season. And sometimes those atmospheres can carry teams at least for a couple of quarters. That's so far down the road. Who knows what dynamics have changed?
But you also got to you got to factor in, Catch. There's going to be that game like Houston or TCU.
I think like half the games will be one-score games.
Okay.
But I think when you look at, Texas plays most of the bottom of the SEC. They've got a couple of non-conference games that they should win decisively. I think that Texas, I don't know if I'll say in the majority of their games, but I think at least half of the games this season they will win comfortably. The other games will be closer, and maybe the final score ends up not being quite indicative of how close the game was. But, I expect Texas to be really good. They're a top 5 team. I expect over the course of the season that they will outclass the majority of the teams that they play, especially if this is a team that grows and builds off of last season. Sark will be the first to tell you that every team is different, that, last year's team was last year's team and it's new leadership and it's all of these things. But that team learned how to win a year ago, and they learned how to win close games. In previous seasons, you might have seen them lose a Houston game or a TCU game or, any number of games on the schedule that they ended up winning. The Alabama game is another example. So you figure that this is a team that doesn't have to learn too much, that they're good at the quarterback position. They've got an experienced offensive line. There's a lot of older players on the defensive side of the ball. I just think it will take maybe a few weeks for this offense to totally hit its stride. And for me, weirdly, I think I have more questions about the offense as a unit right now. I feel like we know they're going to be good. I think one of the things that started to happen this weekend, Anwar, it wasn't a loud crisis. This isn't one of these things that I think has dominated social media. We didn't come here on a Monday and it was like, what the hell happened this weekend? It's nothing quite like that. But very subtly, I think there's some questions about Quinn Ewers. A lot of people asking, how come Quinn Ewers hasn't been ripping it up? How come there's been 2 scrimmages and the headline hasn't been Quinn Ewers looks like Heisman candidate, offense cooks the defense? We talked about this on Saturday, that it's probably not a bad thing that the area of the team that you were most concerned about a year ago has showed up and performed pretty dadgum well so far over the course of the first 2.5 weeks, almost 3 weeks of practice. But in this zero-sum game of, well, the secondary's been looking pretty good. The other side of that is, how come we're not hearing more about Quinn Ewers specifically playing well? I'm not worried about Quinn at all. I feel like we know what his floor as a player is. At worst, he's good enough to get this team to a playoff. I mean, at worst, that's the level that he's proven himself to play at. There's this question of, is he going to truly be elite of the elite and a great player? And I don't know that I have a real feel for what the answer to that is going to be over the course of 12 games. But I'm not worried about Quinn. But I have sensed that there are a few people, there is at least a small percentage of people that want to hear that Quinn Ewers is tearing it up in practice. And I don't think that's where the offense is yet. I don't think this passing game is there yet. I think it will eventually get there. But, you think back to a year ago, I just will continue to say this. You can't take what it meant to have Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell, Jordan Whittington, and Jatavian Sanders all on that field together. They have not replaced that. This is a really talented offense with a lot of really talented skill positions, but they're not better at the skill positions than they were a year ago. And I don't think Quinn Ewers yet has the chemistry and connections that he had when he had multiple years with Xavier Worthy, multiple years with Jatavian Sanders, multiple years with Jordan Whittington, and obviously Adonai Mitchell was able to come in and kind of slide in pretty seamlessly inside of the context of all of these other guys had a really good relationship with Quinn Ewers. We don't know who his go-to guy is yet, and I think that's what we'll learn over September. But we're in middle late August, and people want answers.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't heard that plant that flag down moment from the offense. This off season. We know inherently a lot of times, the defense can kind of pick up on tendencies, things to that effect. And so it becomes a little bit harder, for the offense, especially the quarterbacks, where
they know what the offense is doing.
Correct. Right. And so it's a little bit harder that it just comes down to some execution things. Like, it's crazy to think that the guy that we've heard that you might have the best connection with is Silas Bolden. That if out of everybody, because there's a lot of names that we heard previously. Bolden's that's the guy we hear the most. Like, we didn't hear much about Ryan Wingo here in training camp. I hadn't heard a ton about Isaiah Bond. Like, it's every practice is Bolden. So that might be and that guy, I don't think we've even pegged him as a starter yet, Catch. And so we'll see what that looks like. So you can't ignore that. One, they're going to go on the road in a couple of weeks on a Michigan team that's got a really good defense. And with an offense that, let's just be honest, they're going to be feeling their way through it. Colorado State will give them a little bit of a preseason game, but then you really go into the regular season the following week. Then you get the next couple of weeks to work out the kinks. So, this is one of those things, Catch, where if Sark keeps telling us all off season that Quinn's a leader, right? And Quinn, this is year 3 of him in the offense, and how he's expecting big things from Quinn and all that other kind of stuff. But if the QB whisperer, if the QB whisperer is speaking, now listen to him, and I'll give Quinn the benefit of the doubt. And I think the good thing too, though, Catch, I think you would agree, maybe with the exception of Georgia, Texas has got the QB advantage in just about every game on paper that they're playing this season.
I think they even have a quarterback advantage against Georgia. I'm not completely buying the Carson Beck stuff.
Okay. Why not?
I think he's a product of his environment. That if you switch places, I don't think he elevates Texas. And I think Quinn Ewers would do just as well as Carson Beck if he was at Georgia. I think, we've seen it with the Stetson Bennett's. Like Georgia hasn't always needed a 5-star, high, super blue chip level quarterback. I don't know. I have doubts. I'm not saying the guy sucks, because this just in, he does get to play with Georgia.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking that when that guy goes to a Senior Bowl, or when that guy is getting ready for the NFL draft, I don't know. I have doubts that he's an elite talent. He's a good quarterback, but he's surrounded by NFL players. He's got the most talented roster this side of Ohio State in college football right now. And so I don't know. Colt McCoy was a Heisman level quarterback, and he was asked to carry Texas in 2008 and 2009. Every week it felt like the pressure of winning was on his shoulders. And Quinn may have a little bit of that this season. I don't ever feel that with Carson Beck. Nobody ever goes into a Georgia game and goes, Carson Beck's just going to have to do it all himself. And there are quarterbacks on the national college football landscape that do deal with that level of pressure. I don't think Carson Beck has that.
Super Chat just came in, Catch. And you know how we love those.
Well, we do. We stopped the show for them. Do we really know Quinn's floor since last year? He had 3 wide receivers that may start in the NFL this year, plus a top 2 tight end in school history. Yeah, because look, here's the reason why I think we really know Quinn's floor. He's cleaned up that whole turnover thing. You got to think about the Quinn Ewers book at Texas is going into its 3rd season. And in season 1, there were people at this time in training camp. I can remember talking to Anwar about this. I can remember talking to sources. People were questioning Quinn's dedication. People were questioning his ability to comprehend the offense intellectually, and they were talking about the turnovers. We get to season 2, and all of that stuff stopped, and most importantly, I think Quinn Ewers became a guy that definitely takes care of the football. And I think that's continued throughout this spring and into the summer. Maybe they're not putting up pinball numbers in terms of throwing the ball up and down the field, but we're not coming out of scrimmages. We're not coming out of practices, and we're not hearing, Jesus, Quinn threw the ball to the other team 3 times today. Quinn can't stop turning the ball over. Like, that's just not happening.
Yeah.
Arch Manning is the guy now that you're hearing a little bit like, okay, well, at his best, man, he looks good, but still making the big mistake. Sometimes it's not his fault, but sometimes it is what it is. You get the turnovers are on your ledger when you're the quarterback. You're just not hearing that from Quinn. So,
I mean, and we heard that in year 1.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That
yeah.
If he were turning the ball over, and then you'd be really worried about his floor. Like, oh my God, all those receivers have left, and suddenly Quinn's turning the ball over more. That hasn't happened. So I feel like as for all of the talent that Quinn has, the natural talent, the arm talent, all of that stuff that made him the number 1 overall quarterback prospect in a recruiting class nationwide. I feel like from a game manager standpoint, we know he's solid as a rock, that there will be games where maybe he doesn't tear it up, but he's not turning. It's what made the Oklahoma game last year such an eye-opener, because it was basically the only time last year where the game was defined by Quinn's mistakes. And we can quibble over whose fault it was on, I think Adonai Mitchell could have run a better route and competed for the ball better than he did early in that game on one of those interceptions. But yeah, man, I feel like we do know what Quinn's floor is. I don't know what Quinn's ceiling is going to be. I don't know what are the exact heights he will hit this season. But I'm very comfortable, Anwar, in the idea that at worst, Texas will have rock solid quarterback play that keeps them in games, that doesn't lose them games. That's a great starting place to be, because you and I have covered a lot of football in this town for a long time, really since you arrived, where that guarantee on the box wasn't there. You didn't know what the floor from game to game was going to be. And I feel like that's what Quinn kind of proved to us last year. He wasn't elite of the elite most weeks. He wasn't as good as he was in the Big 12 championship game against Oklahoma State every week. But at worst, rock solid. At worst, somewhere in the 150s or a low 160 score from a quarterback rating. And when you have as talented of a roster as Texas had last season, and as talented of a roster as they'll have again this season, you win a lot of games with just flat out rock solid quarterback play.
Yeah, I mean, 100%, which obviously they'll need, going into the SEC, Catch, right? You will definitely need that, and I think for me, Catch, the progression for Quinn, and I think I've always kept this thing in here in the system, and you and I have talked about this before, right? If I take the super chat down, it's I think the progression is that Alabama game, right? Seeing something similar to that week in and week out, and then or the Oklahoma games, or Oklahoma State obviously was like a lights out performance. It's like that when he gets hot and he gets going, like we know what that thing looks like. I think the progression for him is eliminating things like the Wyoming game, right? This year, where you don't have that. Houston was an interesting game as well, right? And I think which one was it? TCU? No, TCU was fine. Texas, they win Texas Tech pretty handedly, but you just want to see a week in, week out. Like, man, I took care of business. I'm chilling in the fourth quarter kind of thing. And I think if he does that, then of course Texas goes into the next level. And again, you were in it, and they were still able to have a successful season. So we're not saying that if it doesn't happen, all is lost. But we're just talking about the progression of things that you would hope for. You want to see that kind of domination week in and week out.
Yeah, and I think the most interesting question, when we entered last season, we knew that Xavier Worthy was going to lead the team in targets, and that in terms of volume, that was going to be Sark's guy. We kind of had a feeling that Adonai Mitchell, we knew, big play guy, red zone guy. I think we knew what his role would be. Same thing with Sanders. And in a way, because we knew those things about those three players, we kind of knew, all right, well, Jordan Whittington is going to be third or fourth receiver. Not going to get a high volume, but we know who he is, a move the chains guy. Wasn't going to have a lot of touchdowns, not going to create a lot of big plays, but he'd be a little bit of Mr. Dependable on days when Quinn needed that. And the offense pretty much played like that. What I don't know, and I'm curious, you think they'll give us Quinn again? I guess we'll get Quinn next Monday, right?
Yeah, next Monday we'll get him for sure.
I'm curious if Quinn was asked, Quinn, it's 3rd and 8 inside the red zone, trying to move the chains. If I say 3rd and 8, who's the guy that immediately pops to mind for you as my go-to guy on big downs? Is it Silas Bolden? Because I don't even know that he's a starter yet. So is it Isaiah Bond? Does he feel so good about Bond that on 3rd and 8, that's instinctively his go-to guy? Doesn't feel like it would be DeAndre Moore. I don't know. The Jonte Cook thing's a bit of a mystery. It's not that he's playing poorly, but you've never heard Jonte Cook had 2 touchdowns today and nobody could cover him. It just hasn't been that kind of a summer yet in terms of August in the last 2.5 weeks. So I really don't know when we go into that. Forget about the Michigan game. When we go again into the Colorado State game, first drive of the game, 3rd and 8 from midfield, who is he throwing the football to? And I don't know that I completely know the answer to that. I have some ideas, but these are roles that I think were almost predefined by the time we got to the start of the season last year that I just think will have to work their way out when the games start. There's no reason to panic now. You can't do anything about the fact that some things you just have to learn on Saturdays. And I think this pecking order with the wide receiver group, I think Quinn finding out who's going to fight for balls, who's going to fight for him, who's who's going to make plays in pressure situations. They probably got ideas, but they don't know. And I think that's one of the real quiet things about this Texas team is that for all of the talent we know they have in that wide receiver room and all the talent they have at the skill positions, they just don't have a lot of guarantees on the box yet inside that group. And I think it's going to be a perfectly fine. I think they're going to be more than fine. We'll do our predictions next week. I can assure you I don't have a lot of losses on this team's ledger. But I just think that we'll enter the season with a little bit more mystery to this team than I think was ever the case a year ago. And I think it's part of what will make that Colorado State game fun on Saturday, because we're 12 days away. And if you were to ask, I'll ask you now, Anwar.
Well, hold on. Before you ask me the question, let's get to this other super chat, because we had a 1999.
Oh, did I miss something? Okay.
Yeah, we got another one that came in. They're coming in. It's fast and furious this morning, so I want to make sure we get to it. So appreciate you both. He wants to know, for 1999, we will definitely stop the show. All right.
Yeah, P-Tex, you're in.
Can you talk through how the offensive mix/approach will change with Baxter out? And does this work to Quinn's advantage? I think there's this thought process people have, Catch, that maybe this becomes more of a pass-oriented team, pass-first team without Baxter. You give me your answer on that, because I have my thought process on that.
I think, I think this goes into the kind of the conversation that we're having. I think this is stuff they're going to have to work out. I don't think this is not the offense of Baxter and Blue. That was a fantastic complementary backfield of like thunder and lightning. And I hate to get it's cliche to kind of thunder and lightning, but Jaden Blue's kind of the lightning. And CJ Baxter is a little bit of the bigger guy, the thunder guy, the between the tackles guy. Does that roll slide automatically? How they use Trey Wisner? How ready is Jarrett Gibson for a thunder kind of a role? Does it come at the expense of a guy in Wisner who is a little more like Blue from a talent standpoint, but is a little more like Baxter from a style standpoint? I think they're going to throw the football a lot. And I think Jaden Blue is going to have a monster season. But I don't know that we're going to see a lot of games this year where I think it's a great question to ask. Okay, final 8 minutes of the game, you're at Alabama like you were a year ago. You have the lead. Can you run the clock out? Can you control the line of scrimmage? Can you slowly but surely just take a team's soul from it? We know that a year ago they were able to prove that they could do exactly that. So and they had Jonathan Brooks at the time, obviously, and Jaden Blue emerges late, but it was a Texas offense that when they needed to could go smash mouth and control the clock and control the line of scrimmage. I don't know. I think they're going to run the ball just fine. I think Jaden Blue's going to be Sark's next 1,000-yard running back. But can they close the show with the running game the way they were a year ago? I don't know. I'm open-minded to the fact that they'll still be able to be as effective in those situations as they were a year ago. But Jaden Blue's a little I think Jaden Blue's a proven home run hitter. He's a proven exciting running back that will put the fear of God in opposing defenses. But he's no sledgehammer. And I don't think Trey Wisner is a sledgehammer. And I have some doubts about just how good I think Jarrett Gibson will be as a true freshman. I don't know that he's a 5 yards a carry guy. CJ Baxter wasn't a year ago as a true freshman, admittedly playing with some injuries, but I don't know that I view as a matter of fact, I do know. I don't view Jarrett Gibson to be on the same level as CJ Baxter. I just don't. And I had questions about Baxter, but in those two guys heads up, I think Baxter's the better player prospect. So I think late in games, they'll probably need to depend on Quinn's arm more than they'll be able to depend on the running game to close games out. And as we've just been discussing, there are roles inside that passing game that haven't been completely figured out yet. So it's all a work in progress. I don't know that I have a great answer for exactly how things are going to look.
Well, if we use history as something to determine, right? One of the things I had to go look up something, Catch. The one thing about Sark, and Catch, you know this is very well, is that he will pride himself on having 1,000-yard backs, right? He's basically told us that's what I do, right?
Don't question him on that. There's one of the few things that he seems to kind of get annoyed by.
He's like, dude, do you know what I am? My history? Like, I've not been the one that have pointed out to him that technically Ronald Jones. No, when he was at USC. I think there was one year that he got like 987. But I will let that go. But look, I went back to it just to make it the conversation easy so people can't see it. Jonathan Brooks was 1,000-yard back last season. Bijan Robinson, the 1,000-yard back before that. Actually, 2 straight years was that. His 2 years at Alabama, Catch. He had Najee Harris, 1,000-yard back for both of those years. 2015 he didn't have one, but 2014 he had one with Javorius Allen. Bishop Sankey was 1,000-yard back for 2 years at Washington. Chris Polk was 1,000-yard back for the 3 years at Washington prior to that. So I think that he's going to do what he does. And I think he will run the ball. And there's a part of him, I think there's a pride part that won't allow him to feel like he can't have like a running back that just dominates and closes out games.
They should have the offensive line that allows them to run the football really well.
Yeah.
I mean, so the pieces are in place, but it still has to be done. That's the difference, I think, with this offense. It's not that its ceiling isn't top 5 in the country good. It does. That's its ceiling. It can be week in and week out one of the best offenses in college football, but it doesn't enter this season proven in that capacity. Quinn hasn't proven to be quite that level of player. The running backs, Jaden Blue's got to prove that he can be that guy. I think he will, but it still has to be done. And then we've got a crew of receivers who've all had various levels of success. Isaiah Bond, clearly very successful last year at Alabama. We know that Matthew Golden, successful at U of H. Silas Bolden, successful at Oregon State. It's all got to come together, though, at Texas with Quinn Ewers. And I almost weirdly have more questions. I feel like I know what the Texas defense is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many bona fide star performers are on that defense, because I think that is the thing that will tell us just how good of a defense that's going to be. Is Jahdae Barron pretty good, very good, or is he great? And I think you could run that exact scenario with every player on that Texas defense. And if 4 or 5 of them turn into great, then this defense has got a chance to be maybe the best unit on either side of the ball. I think this is going to be a good defense. I feel like they've got pass rushers. I feel like they've got more answers in the secondary. I think they'll be okay in the middle. I think they got the makings of a good defense.
Yeah. Catch. Hey, you guys keep them coming. We'll talk about what you want to talk about. El Presidente, our main man, Eric Sells Holmes. He is back. Catch. He says Ewers has to be the best player on this team. Having Sark in his ear on the helmet communication is going to be a huge advantage for this Texas offense. Cheat mode. You think the helmet communication gives Quinn an advantage where Sark can be in his ear for the first 15 or so 20 seconds? I forget the time before it cuts off.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's not been like my big focal point of the offseason is this communication between the quarterback and the coach. But yeah, it'll help. But then it turns off, and then Quinn has to go do all the hard stuff. So I think it helps. Do I think Ewers has to be the best player on this team? I don't think he is the best player on this team. So, my expectations for Quinn is that he's going to have an excellent season. But I don't think he's the best player on this team. But I'm definitely ranking Kelvin Banks ahead of him. I'm probably ranking Anthony Hill at this point. Although maybe that's a little unfair. Maybe that's me taking a leap of faith with Anthony Hill. Maybe Quinn comes in third. Maybe. Is Quinn the best player on that offense? If he is, Texas will be one scary team into the college football playoffs. I think, though, that Quinn performing at that level is the thing that we're waiting to see if he can do, or will he. It's not a matter of can he do it. It's a matter of will he do it. And that's what they play the games for. But as of right now, I can't definitively say that.
Do you think Quinn needs to be in New York for this team to make the playoffs?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. Fair enough. Okay.
I don't know that he needs to be third team all SEC for Texas to make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
If Texas is going to be a top 4 seed or a top 8 team, now this team has the talent to go 10-2 and Quinn not be great. And 10-2 will get them into the playoff, but it probably means they're not, getting a bye week. It means they've got to win more games to get to a national championship game. So, they have to win a first round game, then they got to win a quarterfinal game, and then a semifinal. If you don't get a bye, which I think in order for Texas to get a bye, Quinn's got to be in New York. But to make the playoffs, no, I don't think Quinn has to be quite that good. I think Quinn could be as good as he was a year ago, and there's a pretty good chance that this team will be in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I probably go 2, but that's not. That's such a close thing that we won't have to argue, about that one. All right, do you remember? And again, if you guys have super chats, you want us to, you guys are quick on the draw. We're getting them out there fast. So if you guys have something else, but in the meantime, Catch, do you remember you had to put a pin in something a little bit ago where you're about to ask me a question? Do you remember that at all, or is that?
I do.
Was that like 2 decades ago?
That was like 2. I'll think of it, but it had something to do with the defense, and I don't know. I can't remember.
Okay. So Catch, let me ask you this. It's not super chat, but I'm going to put this up here. I started off talking about blind spots, and Mike Harges, not Mike Harge, by the way, says he questions his loyalty because of the Carr Thompson thing.
Oh, we have a Mike Harge and a Mike Harges?
Yes.
Okay.
Harges and Mike Harge. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mike Harges. We got 2.
Thank you for clarifying that, because I
just
was assuming they were the same people.
No. Both are brothers too. It could happen. But he questions.
God, I'm sorry.
But blind spots. Do you think Sark's there'll be a blind spot that's revealed during the season that we'll get into it and say to ourselves, see, I told you so? Or do you think that's been cleaned up?
I don't think it's an issue. I mean, look, we know that CJ Baxter was his boo last year. And I think that was the one player personnel decision that you sometimes wondered what was leading that decision. I'll push back on this notion that there was loyalty to Hudson Card over Casey Thompson, because I don't think Sark had any loyalty to either one of them dudes.
By the end of the year, he was over both of them.
He was not. I don't even know if he was saying their last names by the end of the 2021 season. he got rid of Hudson Card and turned the page incredibly quickly off of him, and then didn't have a whole lot of use for Casey Thompson when it was all said and done. And look, I don't know that any of us can question that decision making. Hudson Card still kind of sputtering along. I'm rooting for him, but he was just a guy last year at Purdue. Casey Thompson appears to be just a guy, period.
And he's still playing, isn't he? Isn't he? Is it like year 7 for Casey?
But did he get hurt?
Yeah, I think he got hurt.
So I don't know. I think he transferred to Florida Atlantic, right? To be with Tom.
With Tom, and I think he got hurt. You're right.
So, I don't know. I have not completely kept up with the second transfer that Casey has made. Yeah, I don't think it's an issue. I tell you what, I think maybe his biggest loyalty issue is to the idea that I don't think he likes to rotate his receivers a ton. So how long does it take for 3 or 4 guys to cement themselves as the guys? Because I think he'll have guys that it won't surprise me if we get to October 1st and he's getting questions about, well, Sark, you said at SEC Media Days that you guys were 6 deep at wide receiver, or actually 7 deep is what he said at SEC Media Days. But right now in the last game, Bond and Bolden, Cook, and Moore, they play the majority of the snaps. And can you get Ryan Wingo more into the offense? Can you get Matthew Golden more into the offense? Or maybe those roles switch with somebody else. I think that by the time we get to the middle of the season, he will have his group of players. And I don't anticipate – I think he will grow loyalty towards the guys that he will depend on at the wide receiver position. And I don't think he likes taking those guys off the field. So I think for all of the talk about rotations, I think his loyalty to just the principle that he likes to have a handful of guys that are his guys, because I don't think he wants to be at Michigan or against Oklahoma or against Georgia and it be a constant flow of guys coming in and out. That's just not how he operates or has operated since we've watched him since the beginning of 2021. Can a dog learn new tricks? Maybe. Or does an old dog eventually trend back to what he is most comfortable with? I tend to think all this rotation talk at wide receiver will subside sooner rather than later. And by midseason, we'll look back to all of the conversations that were had about they're going to be rotating receivers in and they're 6 or 7 deep. Yeah. I think we'll feel like a bunch of knuckleheads for just talking that much about the idea itself.
To be fair, I won't feel any kind of way because I've never bought it. So just
keep my name out your mouth. That ain't me.
Everybody else might feel. I'd be like, yeah, right. And that's not his resume. Hey, super chats, keep them coming in. Tracy, my man T, is in the house. He goes, what type of pass numbers will Quinn need to accumulate to be labeled him? And the thoughts on what Sark has done to make better adjustments in the second half. For Quinn to be known as him, what do we? Because I'm thinking like 4,000, right? I mean, isn't that kind of what it would need to be for you?
It's less about yardage and more about I want to see that quarterback rating above 170. And he was at the end of last season. Put Quinn's numbers back up again real quick on more before, and Tracy will come back to that super chat. But you'll see if you go down to the bottom, take that super chat.
Oh shit.
Rating. And a lot of that was impacted by he was in the 160s for a lot of the season, but you look at those 2 of those last 3 games were among his worst games of the season. 125.6 against Washington, a weird 133.7 against Texas Tech. And if you look how many games on the schedule he had more than a 170 quarterback rating. Baylor, Oklahoma State. That's it.
Mm.
Everything else was very consistently in the 160s, in the 150s. That was his level. I'd like to see him, if you want to, in order for him to win a Heisman, that's where he's got to go. He's got to be a 170 plus quarterback. And if he does that, if we're talking about, and you can take that down now onward,
Okay,
I'll put Tracy's super chat back up. That would make him. Because now you're talking about a passing season that would rank with Colt McCoy's from 2008. And I don't have McCoy's quarterback efficiency memorized like in my brain, but I want to say it was like a 171 or a 172. If Quinn can hit that level, he will be among the best quarterbacks in college football. We will be seeing the best version of him, and he will be rightfully the best player on the team. If you're a quarterback performing at that level, that makes you Superman in a lot of ways. And it makes you way more impactful than any other player on the team could possibly be. So forget about touchdowns and yards and all of that stuff. Can he consistently play at a level where the quarterback efficiency, forget about our opinions, right? Where we're subjectively saying, oh, he was great or he was very good or whatever. Let's just rely on the data to tell us he's either playing at a level that he's never played at before or he's not. That's what I'm looking for.
See, I think I get what you're saying. I will look at numbers, and can I put this on the screen here, Catch, so you can see real quick? Hopefully this doesn't screw up a lot of things. Let me see if I can share this. All right, let me see what this looks like. You see the Bo Nix numbers that I have? Can you see that, or I need to make that larger?
No, I can see them.
That for me is him, right? When you look at Bo Nix from last year, get past Portland State, just basically week after week, you're looking at the QB ratings that are there. I'm looking at yards, touchdowns, interception, the ratio. He finishes with a 188.3 passer rating, right? The 4,500 yards, 45 touchdowns, only 3
it's a
interceptions.
188 passer rating.
Yes, 188.3.
I mean, and that's significantly higher. Bo Nix had one of like the top 10 seasons that any quarterback has ever had in college football last year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He didn't win the Heisman.
No.
But his numbers over the course of the season were, again, that dude threw 45 touchdowns and had 3 interceptions.
That's just sick. And how many of them were probably like a tip or something crazy like that, right? You know,
never threw more than 1 in any game.
No.
And then, you combine the rushing touchdowns with the passing touchdowns. He accumulated more than 50 touchdowns over the course of the season. I mean, that would be the single greatest quarterback season that any player at Texas has ever had. So, I mean, yeah, man, get some of that. And look, when we talk about performing in games where you had better than a 1, could put that back up real quick on
Sure. Yeah.
How many games was Bo Nix better than a 170 for a game rating? Well, Portland State, Hawaii, Colorado, Stanford, Washington State, Cal, USC, Arizona State, Oregon State, Liberty in the bowl game. He's performing at an elite level in 2/3 of those games. Mm-hmm. And that's not to say that in the other third, he was poor. Yeah. It's just to say that in the overwhelming majority of his games, he was hitting marks that through a vacuum would represent at Texas the best quarterback passing season of all time. So, if he gets near that, Texas to me is a Final Four team again, very possibly playing for a national championship if he's Bo Nix 2023 good.
Yeah, and that's the question. When he said like him, right? That was just it. And then the last part of that, and I got Sark in another hour. So we
need to wrap up because I have a Sark question I want you to ask.
Hit me.
He's just they're offering some dudes in this recruiting cycle that are kind of head scratchers unless they've just decided we're going to have 105 scholarships next year and we can offer some guys. And I'm just curious if they're operating under the impression that they will have 85, or do they feel confident enough that there will definitely be 105 scholarship guys next year that they're already preparing for that?
That actually was going to be my question. So we are on the same page. Before we go, another one comes in here, Catch. Do you think the Texas DNs can make up for bad defensive line play if they are not doing good? And one more chance, we see your super chat coming in as well.
No, I mean, the DNs can't make up for the defensive line just getting the interior just getting pushed around. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think at worst, Texas will be okay in the middle. And then I think they've got a chance to be exceptional on the edges. So I think all in all, that would make for a pretty good defensive line, all things considered. How many teams can really punish Texas with their ground game between the tackles over 60 minutes? Georgia, Michigan. Is that it? Maybe. Maybe. So it might be that Texas, if they're really not good up front, it might not be that gets revealed until the playoffs. That maybe in a playoff situation, if they're really suspect there, that's where they could be had and taken advantage of. But Dirkley, I don't think this is going to be a big problem.
What about this one, Catch? This is, oh my God. Catch could do another show on this one. He wants to know, Catch, does passer rating really matter? Quinn, 158.6 last year. I think he's saying Casey Thompson was at 154.7 in 2021.
I mean, Casey Thompson was pretty good in 2021. Like, let's not forget that. Anwar and I, we'll go down the rabbit hole if we get into the Casey Thompson 2021 discussion. Here's why, one more chance. I think it matters. It's not subjective. It's not. We know what represents elite of the elite play from a numbers standpoint, and we know what doesn't. And I think, look, you're talking to the guy that once called Shaka Smart a damn good coach, and then people freaked out because everybody's interpretation of damn good was completely different from the next person. What I like about the quarterback rating is that I won't show up on a Monday and say, Quinn was damn good, or Quinn was, I've got the numbers tell a story. Are they the end all be all? No. But over the course of a 12, 13, 14 game season, it metrically gives us an idea of performance level that isn't subjective. So, don't get too lost in the weeds on the passer game rating. There can be outliers. There can be weird things. Quinn could have a couple of balls get tipped up in the air or balls that are dropped. And we've seen these things happen where it's like, well, if some things had changed, his numbers would have looked different. Over the course of a 12-game season, though, that stuff normalizes. You're going to have some balls get dropped. You're also going to have some receivers that make amazing plays on balls that bail a quarterback out. These things, more times than not, even themselves out. But at the end of the year, Quinn was pretty good. That's all he was. The numbers reflect that. And the thing is, if you think that Quinn was better than that, if you think, oh, Quinn was great, the numbers don't support that. So, I try not to get too lost in the weeds on the quarterback rating. And I'm talking to myself as much as anybody else. But, yeah, look, it matters. It matters because when they don't matter? When they're not convenient.
Yeah. By the way, can I say something to one more chance, just to be fair?
Yeah.
Can we look at Casey Thompson's hand for a second? Can you give the poor guy a break? Like that was his hand for most of that 2021 season. I just want to put that out there, okay?
I think what's really interesting, though, that when you compare the two guys, Thompson in 2021 and Quinn last year, they both faded a little bit towards the end of the season. That there was a time where they were near 170 or in the mid 160s. And then that number kind of drained its way back down towards the bottom based on the way seasons ended. Let's hope that doesn't happen this year. We want to see Quinn Ewers at his best at the very end of the season. And that's not quite what happened last year.
Catch, I'm trying to get out of here, but the money's going to keep coming. I'll have to stay. Money B's in the house. He's got a $5 super chat. He goes, man, let's give the Longhorn rookie NFL class some love. Guys looking good in the preseason. And did we underutilize Jay Witt while he was here? I think he just must have asked that for Rodolfo.
I would say no, because if you ask the Rams whether they would rather have Adonai Mitchell or Xavier Worthy instead of Jordan Whittington, as good as Whittington has been in camp, they'd trade him for those other guys. And I think that is ultimately the reason why, if he was underutilized, it was simply because they had other game breakers that they wanted to utilize a little bit more. Look, man, I love to see these guys playing well. I root for guys to succeed at the next level. It is their dreams coming true. A shout out to all those guys. Christian Jones, though, Anwar, we can close on this. It's a little negative, but it happens. Our boy Christian, my guy, Christian Jones.
Oh, yeah.
4 holding penalties in 1 half.
That will get you to the practice squad.
I was going to say, man, if there's ever a line between making the active roster on opening day and being one of 18 guys on a practice squad.
Yeah.
4 holding calls in a half will...
That'll put you on the practice squad. If you're going to be a late round pick who's holding like that, they're going to like, yeah, you need some work, because we cannot put you out there like that, my friend.
He's had a good camp from what I read, but 4 holding calls in 1 half. Thank God they're not on Hard Knocks.
Oh, God. Poor guy. They would be getting killed right now if he was on Hard Knocks.
I'm sure that sounded and felt a certain kind of way in the position meetings when they were reviewing film.
What's Keelan Robinson been doing, by the way? What's Keelan Robinson been up to?
I didn't see him get a touch in the last game. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. I think at this point, given that it doesn't seem like he's too active in preseason games, not sure he's going to have a role. My guess would be that he's the kind of guy that gets stashed away on a practice squad, but it's hard to see him making the team right now. I'm not even sure if he's even in the conversation. So, guys, on that note, it's Monday. We got to go because Anwar's got to get to Steve Sarkisian. It's almost like it's the start of the season. Monday press availability with the head coach. Guys, thanks. Comment, subscribe, notifications. You guys know the drill. Do that stuff. Thanks to our guys over at Rogue Shop. Again, use that promo code OrangeBloods. Take advantage of all of the stuff on that website. I'm telling you, I may make my order as soon as we're off the air, and then by the end of the week, I'll open up the goodies in front of everybody. But for now, Anwar's got to go be a journalist. I've got to go get ready for some other stuff. You guys take care. Have a great week. We'll see you House Divided in a couple of hours. By the way, the Orange Bloods Daily and Black fundraiser for Texas baseball NIL begins in 2 hours. So get your checkbooks out, get your cash out, get your credit cards out. Great prizes on the way.